So far in this series, we have looked at how the bony structures that make up the torso should be oriented relative to each other. Today, we will answer the question of how we want our torso to be oriented over our legs. Should the weight of the torso be forward of the legs, directly over the legs, or behind the legs? It might seem natural to say that we would want our torso to be directly over our legs. You may have heard of the idea that we want to stack our bones to be optimally balanced. Perhaps that would be true if bones and muscles were the only things to consider when it comes to posture. But we cannot leave out our fascia, which are massively important to any real understanding of posture. Fascia is a type of connective tissue that behaves in a way that is similar to an elastic band. Fascia can be as strong as steel, and its usefulness in making the body stable cannot be overlooked. For fascia to function the way it's supposed to, it must be stretched to be taut and cannot be made slack and limp. But fascia can't be controlled or moved like muscle. The only way to change the condition of your fascia is to change the position of the bones that the fascia are connected to. If you want to make your fascia taut, you have to orient the bony structures in your body in a way that pulls your fascia into its full length. Good posture could be defined as the posture which stretches all the fascia of the body. A good way to understand fascia is to look at a tensegrity model. These models can appear to defy physics. They seem like they should be out of balance, but they aren't because they use the tensile strength of cables, wires, or tendons as they're sometimes called, to create stability. The fascia in our body are like these cables, and they can keep seemingly out of balance things upright, but only when they're tense. If you make even one cable in a tensegrity model slack or limp, it will crumble. The same is true for people. To understand how we want to orient our torso in relation to our legs, we have to understand what major fascia connect the torso to the legs. While the psoas fascia, the fascia that sheaths your psoas muscles, and the thoracolumbar fascia are both relevant, the most important for today is the iliotibial tract, or IT band. The IT band connects at the front of the top of the pelvis, at a point we have previously called the iliac. It travels down the side of the leg and connects at the side of the knee. The first question we can ask is what movement would shorten this fascia? If the iliac were to go forward and down, the iliac and the side of the knee would be moved closer together, shortening the distance that the IT band covers. This would make the IT band slack, and so we certainly don't want to make a habit of moving our iliacs forward and down. Unfortunately, that is exactly what we see in most people. We saw in the first episode of this series that people tend to rotate their entire pelvis so that the front end goes forward and down. But it's not just the pelvis that moves too far forward. The torso also comes forward. Having all that weight coming forward leads to a lot of problems for people in their knees and ankles. It also makes lengthening the IT band impossible. To lengthen the IT band, we will need to pull the iliac back and up away from the side of the knee. That will require a rotation of the pelvis, but it will also require us to bring our mid-torso backwards in space, because having all that weight so far forward will tend to keep the pelvis tilted forward. However, if we were to bring the weight of the torso backwards so that it pressed down on the back of the pelvis, that would actually tend to help us prevent our pelvis from rotating forward. It would also help us straighten out our lower back. It should be clear now that we want the weight of the torso to be behind our legs. I'm not sure it's even possible to have the weight of your torso directly over your legs, as once you've moved the torso forward at all, it will throw you out of balance, and you will end up with your torso forward of your legs. As you can see, when your torso is behind your legs, your back will actually be behind your heels. This isn't something you'll see in the people around you. Now you might think this looks out of balance. It's certainly not an example of stacking your bones. But that is because we are using the tensile strength of our fascia to support us. This is really what achieving poise is all about. If we think of the IT band as a strong elastic here at the front of the leg, we can see how if the weight of the torso is back, it will keep the back of the pelvis down and the front of the pelvis up. That will pull on the elastic and make it taut. That strong elastic provides the counterbalance to our torso, essentially for free. We are not efforting with our muscles to stay in this position. The tensile strength of the IT band is what's making us stable, just like in a tensegrity model. On the other hand, if our torso comes forward and our pelvis tips forward and down, we are getting no support at the front of the leg. Our entire structure, our entire body, is falling forward. In this configuration, our only option is to pull something back to counterbalance. And we see that people pull the top of their rib cage, their shoulders, their neck, and their head back. Most will also pull their sit bones back. Then you're left with a bent and shortened torso, and your only hope for stability is in overusing certain muscles and doubling down on bending and shortening. The key to achieving poise is using the tensile strength that is in your fascia. Unfortunately, most people leave that support locked away in limp fascia, and they don't understand how to make the movements that would unlock that potential and bring them into a stable equilibrium. When we say we want the torso to be behind the legs, that means we want our upper sternum, lower sternum, eighth ribs, and iliacs to all be on the same plane as a point we will call the instep. The instep is on the talus bone right at the front of the ankle. It's clear to see that most people do not have their torso in line with this point. Virtually everyone is leaning forward and putting their weight onto the front of their feet. People are essentially sagging forward because their fascia is limp. They are a tensegrity model with slack cables. The result is poor postural function and mechanical strain that often leads to pain. If we return to our game with the yardsticks, we can now play while standing. We can start by measuring the distance from our insteps to the wall. Then, as long as you don't move your feet, you can test out the other points and see if they are too close or too far from the wall. Try it out yourself and find out what you see. There are a couple more parameters concerning the torso that we will consider in the next episode. Can you think of what we're still missing? After that, we will finally be able to start thinking about moving our torso through space, something we do all the time, but do we really know how? Stay tuned and find out.